We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Antry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Surprisingly, not that many questions this week. Maybe it's all coming to an end. Who knows, Tom?
We've been saying it for years. We're going to finally hit the bottom of the well of questions.
That's
right.
Like,
oh yeah, they already answered that. Just wait till HDMI comes out with a new standard, and then
that
we'll
could happen.
all be doing it again.
Putting in all the timestamps just means that people are able to find old answers that much easier. So that must be it. Must not have anything to do with it being holiday time and holiday season and people maybe getting busy at the end of the year. Couldn't be any of that. But it allows us to talk a little bit.
The answer to your question of did I buy the right thing on Black Friday is no.
Right. Yes.
You bought the wrong thing because you bought it on an impulse instead of thinking about it. The few of you out there that had been kind of hoping that something would go on sale on Black Friday and it did, and you grabbed it. If it wasn't an 83-inch OLED for $3,000, then it wasn't the right purchase. That's just... Or if it wasn't a sub from SVS. I am continually appalled by the number of people who will answer questions on Reddit and other places about what size sub I should get without ever asking about the room. No indication of the space it'll be in. There's like, well, I have
what speakers do you have?
SB1000. Nothing. None of those. No. Just nothing. Just like, I have a this. Should I get this or this?
Right.
And they're like, well, I have a Klipsch 10-inch. Should I get the SVS PB1000 or the SB2000? And they're like, well, how are you answering this question? You can't answer that question based on that information. You have no idea.
It's the assumption, Tom. They heard it. They've heard it, or they think they've heard it. Sound is coming from there, so that must be all there is to it.
Quite thirsty.
Okay. Do you have enough drinks to go around?
No.
You're still out of focus. I don't know why your camera is always out of focus.
Why is my camera out of focus?
It's always out of focus. I don't know if it's... Hold on. It doesn't even seem to be focusing on your microphone that's closer to the camera than you are. That doesn't seem to be it.
Hold on. Let me see if I can figure this out here. Webcam settings.
Did you find them, finally?
No, I know where they were.
This is just fascinating stuff for our audio-only listeners, which is
it says autofocus.
It is autofocus. It's just auto not focusing on your face.
How about now? Is that better?
Not really.
Give it a second to update. What's it focusing on?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out.
I've got this just ginormous forehead that is just one big
You're wearing
glare.
glasses. How would it not recognize? You've got, headphones on that make you look like Princess Leia. So, how would it not notice ears and a face?
Maybe the lens is dirty.
It could be that. That could very well be it.
I don't have any. I mean, I have my T-shirt, but I don't want to. If I take that camera down, it's going to be a thing.
Yeah, that's going to be a thing. That's all right. You've been out of focus for the past 2 weeks.
You're blurry too, though. But who cares?
That's a different camera that you're seeing on Skype.
I like your OLED box behind you, though. I'm sure that's
nobody
cropped
can
out
see
for everybody
that
else.
on the thing. It's cropped out of the video. Yeah, there is an OLED box in my picture behind me, though. So that's going on. All right, all of that. What we've watched this week.
What have we watched this week? I guess you finished your movie from last week?
I finished the movie from last week, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, starring Nicolas Cage as two characters, both of whom might be named Nick Cage in this movie. So, was really enjoying the first third that I saw last week. It didn't maintain all the way through. It remained exceedingly self-referential throughout the entire movie. Like the movie itself referencing its own structure and writing as it's going along. So it's one of those types of movies. So if you get a kick out of that type of exceedingly self-referential stuff, then you'll enjoy this.
If
Pedro
you like
Pascal.
She-Hulk, you might like this.
Possibly.
She-Hulk is very self-referential.
It's not quite fourth wall breaking. It's not like he looks straight into the camera like she does, or Deadpool does at some point.
I want to watch that movie, that series again. I need to.
She-Hulk?
But yeah, because I think I'll enjoy it even more the second time.
That could very well
really
be.
enjoy it the first time.
And honestly, yeah, now that you mention that, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent might be a movie that is even more enjoyable on second and third watches. You know, once you know what you're in for, you can just go with it. So I give it a thumbs up. I'm not sure it'll be for absolutely everybody, but Pedro Pascal is also in it. He's essentially the co-star. He is fantastic. He is, I mean, when is he ever not entertaining? Honestly, he's very entertaining in pretty much everything that he does. But yeah, right alongside Nick Cage there, being his most Nick Cage self. And yeah, that was quite good. I also rewatched Avatar, because Avatar: The Way of Water, the sequel, is finally coming out next week. I do have my tickets. Do you have your tickets, Tom? You must have your tickets in advance. I would just, yeah. I think the look says it all. The audio listeners can't quite, just comprehend.
Take that pregnant silence for what you know it to be.
But I do have my tickets.
Barely contained rage is how I would describe it.
Avatar: The Way of Water. I'll be seeing it on the Thursday opening. I will be seeing it.
Couldn't care less about that movie, which means I could care a little bit. It means I care a little bit. Sure.
A tiny little bit, yeah.
A tiny little bit. But it would be hard to care any less.
There must be a little bit of curiosity in the back of your mind. I know
it exists. The whale jumping scene, I was like, didn't they do that in that Orca movie?
Of course.
Yeah, Orca movie where it jumps over the kid and he reaches up and touches the bottom of it. Free Willy. Is it just a remake of Free Willy with blue people? I feel like that's the direction this whole series is going. Take a movie that was very good and then remake it with blue aliens, and then you must put somewhere in there a word that's so ridiculous that it just drops everybody out of the movie for like 15 seconds.
I mean, it's pretty hard to top Unobtainium, so we'll see what he's got in store.
Don't sell your boy Cameron short.
That's right.
Don't sell him short. He's had like 10 years to come up with a stupider word than Unobtainium.
Could be. So anyway,
it's like something my 6-year-old would have written in a creative writing story for school.
I think most 6-year-olds would have gone, that's a bit too much.
That's a bit heavy-handed. It's a bit on the nose.
It's like, I found a new species of dinosaur. What's it called? Old Dinosaurius. That's about the level. But anyway, I will be seeing The Way of Water in high frame rate. I was reading up on it. I figured that it was going to be like shot at 120 frames per second, maybe shown at 60, but apparently it's 48. Apparently it's all 48, just like the Hobbit movies were, which like I say, every time I've watched high frame rate, I go in expecting to dislike it, and I never have. I've always found it kind of interesting to look at. So, I did appreciate. It's like
me with that Alita movie. I went in there expecting to be annoyed by the graphics, and I was like, "This is not bad." What was I complaining about something you haven't experienced?
It's still in my head that like I'm not gonna like the high frame rate, even though I've had the experience of watching it multiple times now. But I did appreciate James Cameron saying that he was like, we what did he say? It was like almost like a little bit of a hack, because it was shot at 48 frames per second consistently throughout. And he's like, I actually wanted to do sort of a variable frame rate thing, but movie theaters just don't have the equipment to do a variable frame rate. So what they did is in the editing, they essentially chose how many frames they want to show at whatever given moment. He's like, so if it's a scene of just two people talking, he effectively lowered the frame rate by showing the same frame multiple times in a row, at least twice in a row, to get it back to 24 frames per second. And sometimes it might even be a little bit lower, a little bit in between, and then the high action scenes will be the full 48 frames per second. And that is per eye, because they were shooting with two cameras for genuine 3D. This wasn't a post-production 3D thing. So I'm curious to see on a technical level what it's going to be like. I don't have access to the very best theater technology that is out there. There are no theaters in my area that have the very best theater technology, so I'll be seeing it in about the best that I have available to me. It is not laser, but it will be high frame rate, it will be 3D, it will be large format, and it will be Atmos, so I'll report back on that. But I did rewatch Avatar, because I don't think I've watched Avatar all the way through since I saw it in the theater the first time.
I have not, but I don't need to. I remember every bit of that movie. It's we just remember what Kevin Costner did.
Yeah.
In Dances with Wolves. And then turn everybody blue.
Or Fern Gully, or Disney's Pocahontas, for that matter.
I mean, there's just so many movies.
All pretty much the same. But I didn't recall just how much narration there was. And I was like, oh, yeah. They just flat out tell you exactly what's going on. Like, nobody is going to be left behind in this movie. There is no subtlety. There is no, oh, that's what's going on. No, they will just
James Cameron makes movies for my wife. He's like, somebody's not going to get this. I better make sure they get it. And I'm like, my wife's like, oh, thank you.
I didn't remember.
I was lost.
I didn't remember that Sam Worthington just narrates the whole thing. I was also a little bit surprised at that. And then, Sam Worthington, again, like, because everybody else is hamming it up a bit. They're chewing the scenery in there. Sigourney Weaver, and I'm forgetting the name of the military guy. I should remember his name.
Oh, yeah.
But you know who I'm talking about.
Scarface or whatever.
Yes, that's right. And Giovanni Ribisi and all of them. They're chewing the scenery in there. And so I think it's very purposeful that the main character, Sam Worthington's character, is just the flattest, least charismatic blank slate of a protagonist that you could possibly have.
Please project yourself onto me. That's what his character is.
To be, but it's, man, like the beginning scenes where it's like, he's wheelchair bound, but he gets in this avatar and he can run again. I'm like, nothing, just nothing. Like, his avatar has this goofy looking smile on its face, and he's like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh my goodness, the acting. So, and then,
can you dial that back a little bit? You're really going over the top.
Could you
here.
make that a little less audible, Sam Worthington? But
and honestly, all these actors can act. So
that's
right. if Rob is complaining about an actor's performance, it's because the director was like,
I'm not blaming Sam Worthington, because I mean, very clearly with everybody else around him, that was a purposeful choice to have his character be like that. But I just gotta say, like, okay, honestly, the CGI and everything holds up. It still looks good. There's nothing I'm pointing to in there and going, oh, that doesn't look like, it's not something I can't suspend my disbelief. But I just have to say, the Na'vi, like, I just don't find them aesthetically pleasing. I just find what those characters look like kind of ugly. So I don't really want to watch them for 3 hours. You know what I mean? Like,
wait, is that how long the next movie's going to be? I thought it was supposed to be like 5.
No, it's 3 hours and 10 minutes is The Way of Water. So I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Might as well release it directly to video, honestly. For 3 hours and 10 minutes, I need a bathroom break. I'm not making it.
I'm contributing. He said this thing has to be at least the 5th highest grossing movie of all time just to break even. So I guess I'm contributing. I bought my tickets, so there we go. We'll see how it goes.
He's already filmed the next one, right? Or he's in the middle of it?
2, I think. I'm pretty sure he filmed 3.
Well, I thought he was on 3. I thought I read something about him pausing 3. Anyways, who cares?
Whatever. That's enough of that. What did you watch, Tom?
I watched Disney Plus. I started a bunch of stuff. I started Cyrano, but with my wife, and she fell asleep because it was late and she had a couple cocktails into her. So stopped that one. Loved the opening scene of Cyrano. Very excited for that.
I don't know this show at all, honestly.
It's not a show. That one is a movie, and it's on Hulu, I think. So I think it's on Hulu, so you should be able to see it.
Should be Disney Plus up here.
Oh God, I can't remember the actor's name. He was in Game of Thrones. He's the short person.
Peter Dinklage?
That's it. Peter Dinklage. Phenomenal. Can't wait to see this movie. It's because Cyrano is of course from the play. Is it
Cyrano de Bergerac? Is that that's what this is? Oh, okay.
That's all about that. So in the play, he's got a big nose and he's supposed to be deformed or whatever, right? But instead they have Peter Dinklage playing him, and he's just short. He's just a small person. So that is his quote unquote deformity.
I see.
And it like makes perfect sense because it's not like unbelievable that this person would be discriminated against.
Not at all.
Based on what he looks like. It just completely works. Anyways, I'm very excited to watch this movie, but I refuse to watch it with my wife snoring next to me. I mean, she doesn't snore, but my wife sleeping next to me. So, we turned it to Guardians of the Galaxy, the Christmas special, or the holiday special, or whatever that's called.
Holiday special, I think it's called.
Yeah. It's not that long. I think it's like 40
minutes
or something like that. And there was quite a bit of padding in there as far as I was concerned.
I haven't watched it yet. I heard there's a bunch of songs.
There's a bunch of songs, yes. And yes, I could have done without all of the songs, honestly. And I love musicals, but that didn't really add to it. But it was really Drax and Mantis?
Yeah, Mantis. Yeah,
Mantis. It was really mostly about them.
Sure.
And I mean, it was great. It was
Kevin
fine.
Bacon.
It was great. I mean, I'm not. I know if that was a spoiler or not, so that's why I didn't say that.
It was in the trailers. So.
Oh, all right. So Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon's in it too. So it was very exciting. But
and not playing Shaw from the X-Men.
He is not. Though he was great.
We're not quite to that multiverse level just yet, but who knows?
But yeah, there was like inconsistencies through it. Like there was a part where, there was a couple of things where like even my 13-year-old was like, well, if she couldn't jump before, how come she can jump now? I'm like, okay, I don't know, because
Now, I heard one good description of it for anyone who was like, this doesn't really contribute anything vital to the MCU, and why is this like an important part of Phase 4 or anything like that? And I heard a good description of somebody say, you know what, this is meant to be on in the background while you're decorating the Christmas tree, and every once in a while you're going to look over it and have a giggle, and that's what it's for.
Well, it also does kind of explain what the Guardians have been doing since the Thanos thing.
Little appearance in Thor.
Yeah. There is something that kind of explains what kind of has been going on with them in the last little bit. So not totally. Do you have to see it? Absolutely not. But it was fine. I also watched all of the Tales of the Jedi, I think is what it's called.
Now that's an animated one. It's
animated one.
Is it part of the Clone Wars saga?
Like Tales of Ahsoka and Count Dooku, because it's 6 episodes, 3 of which are like background. Or let's call them like backstory or like stuff that's been going on behind the scenes with either Ahsoka or Dooku.
Is this grown-up Ahsoka or young Ahsoka?
It starts with just born Ahsoka.
Oh, all right. So it's before the Clone Wars.
And then there's stuff that happens after the Clone War.
Gotcha.
That's stuff that happens after Anakin turns, like right after Anakin turns, or right after Order 99 or whatever. So there's stuff that happens later on.
66.
66, whatever.
How did you flip that? Well, I am very eager for Star Wars to stop filling in the gaps of everything and just
this is my whole problem with the Star Wars universe. Okay? My whole problem with the Star Wars universe is, for the most part, is you're like, there are no stakes in any of the Star Wars stuff. Yeah. No. Because everyone makes it because they're in subsequent things.
Or if there's a new character that we've never seen anywhere else, it's like, well, if they die, I'm not going to be super shocked.
Right. Because they just invented them just for the scene that we could care about them and let them die. Yeah, so it's hard. Like, and I'm trying to finish Andor as well, but the son I'm watching it with has been having lots and lots of homework, so I haven't been able to watch it with him. But that's another one. I'm like, I really want to like this, and I do like it. It's interesting, but he makes it because he's in Rogue One.
He makes it through Andor, sure.
Yeah, so there's no real stakes. Like, people are shooting at him like he might as well just be standing up.
But his droid might not make it.
Anywho, so yes, Tales of the Jedi was good, and honestly, I wish they had told the story of Anakin turning like they told the story of Dooku's turning.
I see. Okay.
And the way that they did that is they basically had 3 different episodes, and you see one from when he is clearly still a Jedi and trying to be a good Jedi. Then the other 2 are like these like in between, or as he's turning sort of thing. And then instead of the movie trying to show all the little things that happen that make him turn, which is what they did with Anakin. And I'm sorry, I don't care what you personally think as a human being about, Revenge of the Sith or whatever it's called. At no point did I ever buy into Anakin was turning, and never made any sense to me. It just sort of happens. And there just wasn't enough time to develop it. And the way that you give it enough time to develop it is you don't try to say every word that happened in between point A and point B. You just cut out things so that the audience is like, must have been a bunch of stuff that happened that got him to this point. And that's what they did with this Dooku story. Okay. And I was much more like...
Which means they left it open for a future Dooku series where they can fill in all those gaps, Tom.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yes, please stop filling in the gaps. Let's
stop filling in the gaps.
This all took place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So there could be a long interval between what we last saw and the next story. There could be 1,000 years, and it would still be a long time ago.
Somebody needs to like take me out to a bar, buy me a beer, and say, Tom, what do you think of the Star Wars universe? And then just shut up and let me talk for 3.5 hours, because I've got so many problems. Like, I love Star Wars. Do not get me wrong. I love Star Wars. The Force is garbage. It is a writer's like get out of jail free card. Why did this happen? I don't know. Force. Oh, how are they going to get out of this situation? I don't know. Force. Like, you don't even have to try. It's not. They don't even have to try. It's like, no. Darth Vader can pull a starship
Tom,
down with the Force now.
I think
he could barely get off the ground.
We would have felt better and differently about the Force if Rey and what, I can't even remember his name now. Ben.
Finn.
No, Ben.
Finn.
If Rey and Ben, had just swapped their life force back and forth a couple more times, then we all would have been on board with it. Because they only did it like back and forth twice, and then we're like, why did he die? If they had just swapped back and forth a few more times, we all would have been on board. That would have solved everything to do with the Force.
Anyways, Tales of the Jedi, I thought it was good.
Okay. After all that, a thumbs up.
I did think it was good. I thought that it was better storytelling than I've seen in Star Wars in quite some time.
Well, we did it. We rambled on way too long and probably padded
we
this
don't
thing
have
out
that many
beyond what
questions
we're
this
going to
week,
answer. We got plenty of questions that they're just not by that many separate people. So there we go. Now we're not even getting
my coffee. It's a bad sign.
That's right.
This is AVRant, the podcast that does nothing but talk about how much Tom hates Star Wars and loves it.
That's right.
But also hates it.
Love hate.
And answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you got to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to our website to find our podcast episode show notes and links to our all the stuff we talk about, as well as a Flickr album where you can follow along at avrant.com. You can go find us at facebook.com/avrant podcast, youtube.com/avrant, where you can see our blurry, apparently, faces.
Mm-hmm.
Stupid.
It's
Skype
fine.
is stupid. I think there's a way to focus. It's just a webcam. There's just no way to focus it. Contact us directly. Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter is not Twitter. His Hive is at First Reflect.
It's both of them. Twitter for me is hanging on by the thinnest of possible threads. I'm pretty done with that place.
I don't understand why, Rob.
Yeah.
You can say anything you want over there now. You can say anything, Rob. Anything.
Well, unless
it's against Elon specifically,
owner,
and then in which case you will be permabanned immediately and without recourse. Because it's free speech, as long as it doesn't hurt his feelings. Everybody else can suck it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or any of his people, his council of whatever that he's listening to now.
His council. It sounds like he's speaking of Star Wars, sounds like the Emperor.
Is it that far off?
Emperor Palpatine. Emperor Musk of the Twitter Empire verse. The Twitterverse.
Wonderful times.
His Death Star is that stupid Tesla they shot up into space.
Hey,
that's
got a
no
little
moon.
Dude up there.
That's a car. What the hell is that thing?
Got a little dude on board.
Okay. We want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, me, Tom at avrant.com, and I'm on Twitter.
We gotta fix the lower third. It's still. I mean, technically, it's not like we actually
it's still there.
Deactivated our accounts. So that
I'm just gonna let the hackers have it. Elon tried to sell it to get back like $3 of his $44 billion, $3 of his $44 billion that he's spent. I want to thank our listeners of the week, or become a listener of the week, support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is go to avrant.com, click on the Buy a Cup of Coffee link, which will send you to a PayPal donation site. And this week, we want to thank Raph and Media Verge, whatever the heck that is,
or
whoever the heck that is.
That's quite all right. Thank you very much, Raph, and whoever it was who donated from Media Verge. Very much appreciate the financial support over there at PayPal. Yeah. Thank you.
Media Verge.
Well, why not?
I don't know who they are. I could have Googled
Things
them.
Can come through companies. Companies are people, Tom. Haven't you heard?
Our 133 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon's a service where you can sign up to become a supporting monthly listener of our podcast. So every month they'll take some money from you and give most of it to us. So we have 133 of you over there, including Steve. Thank you to all of you.
That's right. That's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up to become an automatic monthly donor to the podcast. Now, clearly, December was a month when a bunch of people's credit cards expired or rolled over to a new expiry date. Because, we dropped a bunch of patrons there, but I don't necessarily think it was a bunch of people going, I'm done with them. I think it was more likely that the month changed and a bunch of people's credit cards had a December 2022 or November 2022 expiry date.
But I think mine's 12/24. That's when I think so.
But regardless, to our 133 patrons who remain and to Steve, who is one of them, thank you all very much for the financial support. We appreciate it.
Thank Jay for sending photos with permission for me to use them over at AV Gadgets. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. That's very nice of you.
And we also got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going through the Elon Musk saga. And also, there's still a pandemic. So thank you. We got thanks from Jay, who says he enjoyed our Thanksgiving episode, our State of the Home Theater Union portion in particular. I don't remember that. Eric, Mike says he can also commiserate with having water damage at one point. Seems like it's a rite of passage for every homeowner. Yep. Billy, Daniel, Aras, and Steve. So we got Jay, Eric, Mike, Billy, Daniel, Aras, and Steve. Thank you for thanking us.
Yes, I'll say the names one more time. Jay, Eric, Mike, Billy, Daniel, Aras, and Steve. Thank you for sending in those notes of gratitude. The notes of encouragement are definitely appreciated. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
All right, in the news, this comes from Infinite Gary. After we talked about Velodyne subwoofers last week and wondered aloud if they were still in business, only to find ourselves during the show that their website for the U.S. was up and running. Gary did a little digging. We really hadn't, or he hadn't kept up with.
Well,
Velodyne.
We hadn't either. That's why we were wondering aloud. We didn't know.
Velodyne Acoustics as a brand. They were founded in the USA in 1983. By 2011, they seemingly vanished from the U.S. market. In 2019, the brand was purchased by Audio Reference in Germany. And it was only this year that they partnered up exclusively with Origin Acoustics to bring Velodyne products back to the U.S. market. So our timing was good. And the full product line is back with full support from Origin Acoustics in the U.S. So hilarious that they're still selling the same subwoofers that they made in 2011.
Is the same models. They mentioned how they have some external amplifiers, like for passive models that are all new, brand new stuff that wasn't around back in 2011 when they seemingly vanished. But it was kind of funny and coincidental that it just happened to be when somebody was asking, hey, is there any way to like easily get my DD10 Plus serviced? And we're like, are they even still around? And it's like, because we looked it up, we're like, they are still around, and hey, they're talking about service and backing up their products and all that stuff, and the DD10 Plus is still a model that's listed on their website, and we thought everything was like fine, and we're like, oh wait, there was actually this gigantic gap,
11-year gap.
You just happened to be on either side of it, and it all worked out swimmingly that you should be able to get your DD10 Plus serviced now that Origin Acoustics is managing everything about them over here in North America. So there we go. It all worked out coincidentally, but that's good. That's good to know that was all going on in the background. And thank you, Gary, for looking into all of that.
Also in the news, Aperion has introduced a new lineup of energy amplifiers and 2, 3, 5, and 7-channel options priced at $1,150, $1,300, $1,600, and $1,900 respectively. So,
yep, 2-channel, 3-channel, 5-channel, and 7-channel. That's what's going on there.
It's $150 a channel, looks like.
Pretty much.
And these were we are almost positive that these were built by ATI, which should shock nobody, honestly, at this point. Very few companies make their own amplifiers.
Right.
they just OEM them. Like Outlaw Audio is famous for having OEM'd like everything that they sell. But, where did their sub come from? HSU. Where did the amplifier came from? ATI. Where did the processor come from? Sherwood. Whatever it was.
Oh yes.
So the general exterior appearances look just like an ATI design, but then we see the trademark dual toroidal transformers inside with individual amplifier channel blades, along with optically coupled protection circuit, and it doesn't seem like any OEM besides ATI makes sense.
Yeah, nobody else is doing the gigantic dual toroidal transformers on the inside and front of the chassis. Yeah. Once you see those, you're like, yeah, that's an ATI. I would be rather shocked if it's anyone else besides ATI as the OEM of these amplifiers. But that is good news for everybody.
That is good
because
news. It just
another
means
source.
That's
That's right.
Spec-wise, they're rated a little bit more conservatively than, say, the monolith amplifiers for monoprice, but that could be as simple as the precise choice of parameters, since it appears that Aperion are fans of having that 4 ohm rating be as close to exactly double the 8 ohm rating as possible.
So that's why the 8 ohm rating you'll see in the spec list of these energy amplifiers from Aperion, it's coming in a little bit lower than the monolith ones of the same channel count, within 25 to 50 watts per channel, all channels driven simultaneously. But then you'll notice the 4 ohm rating is identical. So that gives you a hint that maybe that 8 ohm rating is more about specific parameters than it is about the amplifiers actually being truly any different.
So price-wise, the 3 and 5 channel, the E3 and E5, are exactly the same price as the monolith 3X and 5X. The E2 and E7 are priced $50 higher than the monolith 2X and 5X. Whatever. Aperion is taking reservations. No exact shipping date is listed yet. So my recommendation is buy the cheapest of the two. If you're looking at one specific amplifier from both of those or you want an ATI amp but you don't want to pay ATI prices, go to these two companies, find the one that is the cheapest price.
More than that, what I like is you will notice over at Monoprice when you're looking at the monolith amplifiers that are made for them by ATI, and they don't hide that whatsoever. They slap that right on their own website. Quite often models in that lineup will go out of stock. They just, have all sold out. So I kind of like that there's this alternative that's pretty much exactly the same in price, maybe a $50 difference. And maybe, Monoprice will be out of stock of a certain model, but Aperion will have it. Should mention these do have both RCA and XLR inputs on the back with a little switch toggle for you to choose whether you're using the RCA or the XLR input on the back. So it's not a case where they went for the RCA only design on these Aperion energy amplifiers or anything like that. So they're feature parity with the Monolith series of amplifiers from Monoprice, and they didn't specifically say these are being made for them by ATI, so I guess we can't say with 100% certainty, but let me just say I would be shocked if it turned out that ATI is not the OEM of these amplifiers. The specs would definitely lead me to believe that that is the case.
So it's just a rumor at this point, but apparently Warner Brothers Discovery has a frontrunner for the new name of their forthcoming combined streaming service. HBO Max and Discovery Plus will be merged with a planned interface that will look a lot like Disney Plus's, with tabs for the major brands across the top, and the rumored name for this new combined streaming service, drum roll please, Max. Yeah. Potentially in all caps.
Some places reported it as being Max in all caps, and others just had the word Max capitalized, capital M, little a, little x. We don't know. In fact, it might not even be this entirely.
You know what that never confuses customers? Changing the names of the same things over and over again in a very short time frame. Yeah.
But I mean, you had HBO Go, and you had HBO Now, and you had HBO Max, and now it'll be just Max. Simplified.
They expect the exact launch date and price has not been announced, but they're aiming for spring 2023.
Yep. Which is a little earlier than they had initially said when the companies first merged together. So they're going full steam ahead with this. Now, I just wanted to say that it is all rumor. They have not confirmed that Max will be the name of their streaming service, but I think they're missing a big opportunity here because clearly the name Max as a streaming service is ridiculous, and the only way to correct that is to call it Max Plus. Yes. Because you had HBO Max, you had Discovery Plus, and you're not going to call it HBO Discovery. So you gotta take the ends of those. You gotta call it Max Plus. That's the only way we'll know what it is. That it's a streaming service.
The HBO Max Plus, and then make the HBO really lowercase and really small, and then
Max in all caps,
and then Max in all caps, and that way we'll won't see the HBO part, but we'll know it's there, and that way continuity.
And maybe they should shorten Discovery down to D. so they can call it D plus, because that way maybe people will be like, oh, that must be Disney Plus, and they'll go sign up and they'll go, oh wait, that wasn't the one I wanted. But too late now, we got your money for a month.
Now I have to watch the Snyder Cut again.
Mm-hmm.
Some comments here from listeners. Raph wrote us a few weeks ago after he got some complaints from his neighbors that he was playing movies fairly late at night and was trying to find the optimal combination of Audyssey dynamic EQ and dynamic volume settings that will allow him to enjoy his movies with as little compromise to the bass and the rest of the sound quality as possible while keeping his neighbors happy. He had dynamic volume all the way up to high and his master volume well below reference level. We suggested trying Audyssey LFC, which is a low frequency containment feature of Audyssey, since he hadn't mentioned using that feature, so he did, and it says it has made a big difference. With LFC set to 4, which is the maximum setting, he was able to reduce the dynamic volume setting down to low. He still has dynamic EQ on with its reference level offset set to 0, and he has his Audyssey target curve set to flat. He believes this is the optimal compromise in his case, so that he thanks us for our advice. Actually, your neighbors thank us.
That's true. So these are not Raf's own measurements. I just borrowed some measurements that somebody else had put up there to demonstrate what it is that low frequency containment does when you measure, having it active on a bass sweep. It's not anything super sophisticated. The shape of the frequency response that is coming out is the same, but it is just reduced everywhere below the crossover point of your speakers into subwoofer. In fact, it's up around 100 and 110 or something like that, but that might have been where this particular person who was measuring had their crossover frequency. I'm not absolutely sure. But effectively what goes on is if you're just looking down at the 20 hertz response, then having it set to 1 will reduce everything by 15 decibels. Having it set to 2 will reduce it by 20 decibels. Having it set to 3 will reduce by 25. And then having it all the way up at 4 only does a little bit more, reduces it by 27 decibels. So, it is a considerable amount of deep bass that is being filtered off, but all this talk about it being some kind of sophisticated thing that lets you psychoacoustically still hear the deep bass while not bothering the neighbors and all, it's just a filter. It's just really quite a simple, linear appearing filter, according to the measurements, that is just reducing the bass below the crossover frequency.
It's almost like it does exactly what it says on the tin.
I mean, yeah. Replace the word containment with, I don't know, attenuation? Low frequency attenuation. Yeah. That would be a very accurate name for what is going on. But regardless, if he is happy with the results and the neighbors are happy with the results, then that is exactly what it is there for. And we're glad that he's able to have some dynamic range, like when people are talking or you do go to an action scene and things are louder than the quietest scene in the movie. Because before, when he had Audyssey dynamic volume set all the way up to high, you know, it really meant that everything was coming out at the same volume. Now he can put that back down to low. He didn't get all the way to off, but he can put dynamic volume back to low. So he gets some dynamic range. He's just not bothering his neighbors with the deep bass sounds that easily penetrate walls and make it over to the other person's place. So yeah, that's exactly what it's for, and happy that you got those results.
Me too. I'm super happy. I'm extremely ecstatic right now.
That's what we're here for, Tom.
Can't express.
That's right.
Eric received his Chief CMA 347 Projector Vibration Isolator that normally sells for $365. He lucked out and found the used one on eBay for under $100. If you guys remember, this is the guy whose projector was vibrating, and
he's in a converted garage, detached garage, and when the bass went off, the whole place shook. His projector is ceiling mounted, and even though he had a vibration damping ceiling mount from Peerless, it was damping the vibrations, but the initial vibration was still something that he could see during regular content, and he wanted that to stop. So we mentioned this Chief CMA 347 Projector Vibration Isolator.
And he says, holy cow, it's much bigger and heavier than he anticipated, and it creates a sizable gap between two pieces of NPT pipe with its spring-loaded rubber gasket joint. And we have a picture of that up on our Flickr album or on the YouTube page if you are, our YouTube video if it's how you're watching us. I guess I don't have to tell you that because you're already watching us. Anyways, it's a bunch of springs. You can't miss it. He says it works.
Yeah.
It has dramatically improved his shaking image that used to bother him whenever a big bass thump would hit. If he puts up an alignment grid image and he gets close to the screen, it's still possible to see a tiny bit of image shaking, but it's imperceptible from his seat while watching a movie, so this is exactly what he's hoping for. He sends a big thank you for our help. Is your moniker Media Verge? Is that why?
Yeah.
Is that where this is coming from? Because that's the kind of thank yous we appreciate around here.
That's right. But no, again, very happy to hear back from Eric that was successful. Because honestly,
has an extra $265 in his pocket from finding that thing on eBay.
That's right.
Throw some our way.
But if that hadn't worked, I was out of ideas. Besides just
really
altering the way that his projector was set up, because I couldn't come up with anything that was going to work if that didn't.
If that hadn't worked, then that meant that the subwoofer was physically vibrating the air so much that it wasn't the sound waves weren't going through the structure and shaking the projector. The air in the room was doing it. In which case, we all needed to know what subs he had so we could run out and buy them ourselves.
Well, he just has BB1000s. He was saying, should I upgrade them? He was wondering if he should upgrade them. We're like,
you can now.
Yeah, maybe you can.
You couldn't before, but you can now.
He's like, now I must overcome the vibration isolator.
Yeah, really. I'm going to need a vibration isolator for my vibration isolator. It's going to just be a vibration isolators all the way down.
It's just stacked.
He's not going to mount it from the ceiling. He's just going to stack up yoga mats all the way to the ceiling and just balance it there.
How many series of gaps and springs do we need to overcome having, I don't know, get some power sound audio refrigerators.
Get those full Marty subs or whatever they're called.
That's
those
right.
things
Yep,
start.
that could be those. Some JTR captivators.
There you go. Martin, are we still on comments?
We are.
Martin, after we discussed Michael's subwoofer setup last week where he had moved his seat 1 foot forward and now Audyssey was setting a subwoofer trim level to -12 no matter what, Martin wanted to note that users of the Audyssey editor app have been reporting that the latest app update introduced a bug that has it setting the subwoofer trim levels incorrectly, very often to -12 in error. If you run Audyssey directly from the AV receiver, not the app, then the bug is not present. So that's a fairly easy way to check if it's just because of the editor app. Apparently, MultiQX does not have the issue, and the bug has been reported, so hopefully another update will fix it soon. And apparently since this has been written, there was an app update just today. It does mention bug fixes. We're not sure at this point if that includes this particular issue, but I'm sure somebody will report back.
Like literally minutes before I left my computer to come over to this computer to sit down and record with Tom. So this is happening on the Tuesday of this week. Minutes before I checked app updates in my phone, which I had done last night. So I know it was between last night and this morning of the day that we're recording this, there was an Audyssey editor app update. So yeah, they did not specifically say in the update notes whether this is the bug that they're fixing, but they did mention bug fixes. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that's what it was. Now, I don't actually know if Michael was using the Audyssey editor app or not. I don't actually know. If he was running it straight from his AV receiver and he was still having his subwoofer set to -12, then it's all the things we discussed last week about his seat now being exactly where a gigantic standing wave is doubling up on itself in his room, which could very well still be the case. But this is certainly a good thing to be aware of. I was not aware of this particular bug from the previous app update that was causing a lot of people's subwoofer trim levels to be set incorrectly. So if it was that, then hey, Michael, there's an app update that we know has just come out that you definitely want to try.
All right, let's get to some questions here.
Yeah.
Stop screwing around with Rob just...
I mean, most of that, we comments and news, that's legitimate stuff. That's part of the show. I didn't need to talk about Avatar for so long.
It's I mean... I think we all know whose fault this is, Rob.
That's right.
Jay says he's almost done with his 6-month home theater project that took him 3 years to complete.
That's right.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, be about 6 months, honey.
He's been listening to us since 2012, and we've helped him escape multiple rabbit holes that came up from hours and hours of perusing AVS forum. It's such a vile place. It's almost as bad as Reddit, honestly. But it's pretty close.
There is such good information to be had.
Oh, but it's impossible. There should be like a filter. It just needs to be like a highlight that says, this is actually true. The rest of this garbage is all just speculation and lies.
Snopes just for AVS Forum.
That's right. Now that he's close to the finish line, he says there are definitely things he would have done differently along the way, but he's confident the year will keep him happy for the next 5 to 10 years. Well, it only took you 3 years to get here, so
that's
2
right.
years of enjoyment. So it's all good. Final dimensions are roughly 13 by 23 by 6.5 feet high. So that's a
low ceiling.
Low ceiling, yeah.
Yes, low ceiling.
Not low for me.
Right. Or
for me, plenty of space.
I'm even shorter than Tom, so we would be fine, especially sitting down. But yes.
The Thanksgiving dinner at my brother and sister-in-law's house, they moved a table to get more chairs around it, and there's a light fixture that was hanging down right there. Wouldn't call it a chandelier, just a light fixture. Like, everybody watch your head, and I was like walking underneath it, going, I don't know what you're saying. What are you talking about?
There's some advantages to being short.
Everybody's like, that's why he likes Cyrano. He identifies. No, I'm not that short. I'm still taller than Rob. That's all that's.
That's right.
Okay, so he's 6.5 feet high with a low soffit that runs along the left side of the ceiling and across the back wall. The whole room is constructed using decoupled studs with 2 layers of drywall and green glue in between. All the walls and ceilings are fully insulated and every seam has been sealed. A side note, he says, how the heck do little spiders still manage to get in? Because they teleport. Everybody knows this. Don't be ridiculous. The other day I was cooking and there was a lizard right next to the stove looking at me like, you got anything for me?
Yeah, that's
what
right.
are you cooking? I'm like, you better stay away. This is Florida. I'll eat that.
Yep.
To be fair, he hasn't installed his door seals yet. The 2 windows on the right side wall will also get removable plugs for complete and total light control. He's written to us previously, so he knows we aren't the biggest fans of his Golden Ear Towers speakers up front, but his gear is already bought and paid for, so it isn't going anywhere at this point. Golden Ear Triton reference towers and matching center up front, and while Golden Ear MPX surrounds and surround back speakers with 2 pairs of surrounds. 1 for each row of seats. So he's got apparently 2 rows.
Yep.
2 pairs of Golden Ear HDR 7000 in-ceiling speakers and a pair of SVS PB3000 subs to make a 7.2.4 configuration. It's all powered by 3 Outlaw monoblock amps for the front 3, plus an Outlaw Model 5000 for the surround and surround back channels. And then Marantz SR7010 receiver serves as the prepo and powers the 4 overhead speakers. And there's pictures that Rob's probably showing you. And
I sure am.
It's kind of like in progress as things are going along. And it looks
we can tell where the speakers are going to go. There's some rectangular holes that are punched in those double drywall walls.
So Jay's question, he says, he bought a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio screen because he's been listening to us for a long time, and Rob used to recommend those, so it's Rob's fault. I have never recommended those, so it's not my fault. It's Rob's fault. I remember you saying you want your things to be wider and you should get 2 screens and drop the 16
but it
by
was
9,
two
which
16
was
by
small.
9 screens. It wasn't one of them ever being 2.35 to 1. So
Anyhow, I still blame
I don't
Rob.
think it was quite that.
110-inch Loon Vision model. He must have bought that a while ago because you can't find a Loon Vision in the States anymore. God, it's like impossible.
Well, I think he's in Canada from some of the other things that he's mentioned here.
Yeah. With his front row exactly 10 feet from eyes to screen, that would have given them 45.7 degree field of view. But now he's come around to the idea of using a 16 by 9 screen. So, welcome to the good side. Okay, welcome to the correct side. He does want the extra height for movies that include IMAX sequences, and so now he's thinking he'd get a 120-inch 16 by 9. Using the handy-dandy viewing distance calculators that we mentioned last week, he worked out that it would give him roughly a slightly larger 47.1 degree field of view. When he goes to the movie theater, he likes to sit a couple of rows behind the middle. And he included a diagram, and he says he likes row E. This doesn't tell us anything.
Well, there's the diagram right below there, Tom. You can look at it and see where row E is.
I can see it, but, that doesn't really tell us anything.
It's, I think, maybe 1 row in front of the 2/3 from the front thing. So,
yeah.
Yep.
So do we think he has chosen the correct screen size for his setup? I'm going to say no. I think it's going to be a little big. It's not going to be too big. I don't think that you'll be unhappy, but
no, I don't think so.
You will. It won't be like, oh my God, I have made a terrible mistake. But
no.
I think you'd really be. I think what you would want is closer to 110. But for I think 120 is going to be fine. But it is going to be bigger than you think it's going to be. I think.
Yeah, it's just slightly wider than the 110-inch 2.35 to 1 screen that you had previously.
Like if you don't want to move your eyes at all,
Yeah,
you want
we're talking a couple of inches. So, I mean, I think he pretty much went for, all right, my Triton towers are going to be almost pushed into the corners, and what is the maximum size I can fit here now? And 120 inches obviously is a standard screen size, so we kind of went with that. So yeah, I think I worked it out, and you actually need like a 116 or something like that in 16:9 to be exactly the same width as what he had before, and that might not be a standard size. There are some places that do like a 114 or a 115 as a standard size, but yeah, I don't think you're way out of the mark here. You like I say from the diagram that you shared, the row of seats that's maybe one row in front of the exactly 2/3 from the screen, 1/3 from the back of the theater type of positioning. So yeah, 47.1 degrees, 1-to-1 ratio of seating distance to screen diagonal, as long as the screen is 16:9. I think you will be just fine.
So a local screen retailer was one of the people claiming Illuvision's quality control has gone downhill, and he now recommends either a Cirrus or Grandview brand screens more highly. Do we have any thoughts on those? Again,
that's why I think, plus the diagram that he showed of his theater, I think he's in Canada, because those are are brands that show up here more. So Cirrus, as far as I can tell, is using the exact same OEM as Silver Ticket. Because the design of the frames, the way the screen attaches, everything about what they're offering is like identical to what Silver Ticket is offering the States. So I'm pretty sure there's a Chinese OEM that both of those companies are going to get their screens, and they look extremely similar, except the prices aren't quite as good on the Cirrus screens as they are on the Silver Ticket screens, buying them in the States. Grandview has been around for a long, long time. Again, I think they're OEMing from maybe the same, like getting them from Elite screens, because they look awfully similar to those. So, I mean, my point being, we recommend Silver Ticket all the time. We recommend Elite screens all the time. The Cirrus and Grandview screens look exceedingly similar to offerings from those brands. Would not shock me at all if they're actually, the same OEM, or the OEM is Elite screens in the case of Grandview or something like that. So I don't think there's like a really bad choice to be had here. Still including Illuvision, I don't think that's going to be a bad choice for you either, because you're just getting a fixed frame white screen. Like, you're not getting some super special, there's really anything that could go wrong with it type of screen, as long as there's not some major flaw with the frame. And if there is, you'll discover that quickly, and all of these companies will do a return for you. So I don't really, in this instance, have a reason to say that you should strongly go or avoid any of these three. I don't have a problem with any of them, including Illuvision. I would still happily recommend getting an Illuvision fixed frame plain white screen, because there's really not much that can go wrong with that type of screen. You can get it from just about anybody. So honestly, I would look at what the prices are and go with the cheapest. that would be my solution here.
I have a really, it's one thing to worry about quality control when you have a complex product that
if it's ambient light rejecting screen.
Well, it's hard to know. It's hard to immediately identify if something's not working. You know what I mean? Sure. It's like the quality control on your AV receiver is not great, and sometimes the HDMI 3 input goes out, within 6 months. Well, that's going to be really hard for you to detect unless you're actively looking for it.
Yeah.
This is a white fixed frame screen.
Yeah.
You're going to put it on the wall and go, yeah, looks good. And that's
if it's like
that
the
is
quality
the
control
quality control you're worried about.
How the fabric attaches to the frame, or how the frame pieces fit together. Like, you're gonna figure that out real quick. Yeah. That's gonna show up immediately. So
it may be true that their quality control has gone downhill. I don't know. I'm not aware.
We don't know,
but this is not a complex product, and you'll be able to know right away if you're having issues, and you may be able to overcome them. If it's enough money saved. I don't.
Yeah, I've looked at Grandview screens before, and they seem kind of drastically overpriced, to be honest to me. Now, that doesn't mean if you find one at a great price that's the size that you want, then I'd be happy to get one, because I don't really have any qualms about any of them, to be honest.
So, as mentioned, he's installed 2 pairs of surround speakers. Did we previously say to wire them in parallel? He has his Outlaw Model 5000 to power them. The Golden Ear end wall speakers are rated at 6 ohms. Should he be concerned? I mean, well, if you wire them wrong, they're going to show a 3 ohm load. So
that's what would happen. So we did not say to wire them in parallel. We have always said if you're using 2 pairs of side surround speakers, wire them in series. Now, maybe where the confusion came from is I have described in detail, and I'll do so once again, that you can just run the speaker wire to each of those speakers like you normally would, right?
That's what I would do.
And that's what we would do. That's the easiest thing to do, because then if you ever in the future want to make some changes, or you get a Trinov that allows you to do 2 independent pairs of side surround speakers, then the speaker wire is already run. It's already there. You just took regular speaker wire, ran it to the location where your amplifiers are going to be exactly like you would any other speaker, and you didn't do anything different inside of the walls. It's just that back at the amplifier end of things, you're going to do the red from speaker number 1 connected to the amplifier, the black from speaker number 2 connected to the amplifier, and then the leftover black and red, those just get connected together. You can use a butt splice, you can use a wire nut, you can, whatever way that you're going to fasten those speaker leads together. But you're just taking the black end from speaker number 1 and the red end from speaker number 2 and connecting those 2 wires together. And now you've created a series circuit. And that will be very, very safe to drive, whether you drove it with your AV receiver or from certainly your Outlaw amplifier. They will have no problem driving 2 of those 6 ohm rated speakers that are wired together in series. That would be the way that I would do this 100%.
Yes. So as mentioned, he's installed 2 pairs of surround speakers. Oh, I already said that.
Yeah.
He can't get away with from the idea that he would like to have a control option for his surround speakers. We already talked about it in the past and said you'll use this maybe twice and you'll never bother with it again. But you can't let it go, and envisions being able to select just 1 pair of surround speakers or the other, depending on which row he's sitting in, or being able to use both pairs of surrounds together when both rows of seats are in use. We mentioned that he'd need 3 separate Audyssey configurations, and it would be a hassle using the save and load feature to change them every time. So he knows we are not on board, but if he's simply dead set on doing it, what's the best way to make it happen? I forgot. I don't know. I forgot, and I refuse to answer this question.
I will say the one option that exists now that did not exist the last time we talked to him is the newest Denon and Marantz receivers that have just come out, the 2022 models. They now allow you to have the 2 memory slots for Audyssey, and will in fact in the future, if you pay the upgrade fee, allow you to use those for DRAC as well. So there is that option. Now the ones like the X3700H and that model year, those had the 2 Audyssey memory slots as well. He's going all the way back to a Marantz SR7010, so that definitely had just the 1 Audyssey memory slot, and if he wanted to have separate Audyssey configurations, he would have had to use the save and load function from the Audyssey editor app, or he could use Multi-QX with that model as well. That would be another way to save and load configurations, but there's no storing 2 separate configurations on the AV receiver itself. But the most you can store on the newer AV receivers is 2. So if you were to, in fact, do all 3 of these that you're proposing, you'd still need to use the save and load function. Now, I would say the most likely scenarios by far are you and maybe one other person, but very often you alone are probably going to be the only people in that theater, and you'll be sitting in the front row. So maybe you have one configuration that does not have the second rearmost surround speakers active, and then the second configuration is both pairs of side speakers active. I really don't think there's going to be that many scenarios where you alone are sitting in the back row and are so worried about the surround experience that you're going to want to turn off the surround speakers that are in front. I think that's really unlikely, but all of this is predicated on the idea of buying a new AV receiver, which is not exactly a cheap thing to do in your system. These are going to be multi-$1,000, especially in Canada, it's going to be a couple $1,000s for pretty much any of the options that you'd be looking at to replace your SR7010. But that would be one of the simple ways you could have 2 Audyssey configurations and at the push of a button quite easily change between them. What would you need to do wiring-wise in order to make sure that you could turn off one pair of surround speakers or the other. Well, you wouldn't be able to do the series wiring anymore. The series wiring that I just described, where, you know, two parts of those speaker wires, one from each speaker, are in fact connected together. Well, clearly you wouldn't be able to separate things then. So now what you'd be looking at doing is, like, there's a few different ways that you could do this. Again, you could actually make use of the configuration and the fact that you have separate amplifiers to say, well, in one of these configurations, I'm using the built-in amplifier to power the surround speakers, and in the other configuration, I'm using one of the external amps, and you simply power the external amp off in the scenario where you aren't using the rearmost ones, right? That could be a way that you do this. So, I mean, you'd have each side surround speaker connected to an amplifier. In one case, it's connected to the amplifiers that are built into the AV receiver, and the second pair is connected to an external amplifier. And like I say, it's as simple as you're turning off that external amplifier. Now, that wouldn't give you the option of turning off the front pair, right? The front pair would be the one that's connected directly to the AV receiver and getting its power from there. You'd be able to turn off the back, the rearmost pair of side surrounds by just turning off the external amp. You wouldn't have the option in that connection to have the rearmost on and the frontmost off. But like I say, you're only going to have the two Audyssey configurations anyway, and it would be really unlikely, in my view, that you're going to need the rear row on and the front row off. So I think that's the way we do this without buying anything besides a new AV receiver. But that's kind of a crazy ask to say, oh, get a new AV receiver for this? Like, of all the things that you're going to get one for this, that wouldn't be the scenario. I mean, the other one is, yeah, you go get a Trinov. That'll let you do what you want it to. You have completely independent two pairs of side surround speakers. But again, that's a crazy outlay.
He doesn't want to
cash.
update his speakers, even though he knows we don't like
That's
them.
right.
So I'm sure
That's
he's not
right.
going to go out there and buy a $30,000 processor.
So all of what I've said aside, my real answer is, I wouldn't worry about it. I'm back to the original answer. I would leave both of them running all the time, and I'd have them wired in series. That is 100% what I would recommend doing. But you know, what I've just described could work, could potentially work.
I just think of it this way: it's just more like a movie theater, right? If you're sitting in the front row, there is no reason to turn off those backside surround speakers, those rear. It's just a more diffuse sound behind.
Yeah, like if you went to a movie theater and you happen to be the only person in there, or you and the person you went with are the only two people in there, it's not like they turn off a bunch of speakers for you.
No, there's not side surround speakers in front of you and behind you.
That's
the entire, you know, behind your seating position at least. Yeah. The entire, all the way up and down this theater. So, you know, it's just more like. In fact, you should just add more.
Sure.
Just put more side surround speakers.
No, I mean,
all
the
the way up and down
real
that
solution
wall.
here is to get out of your head and just do what we're saying, which is just wire them in series and have them both going all the time.
It's just very silly. It's a very silly thing to do. Sonically will make so little difference that you'll do it once. Like if you could A/B it, which you can't, but if you could A/B it with your current equipment, you'd go, this is totally not worth it. I'm never doing this again. And that's it. Just take our word for it. Just believe us. You believe us on everything else except for your speakers. So you might as well believe us on this. He says he has not yet acoustically treated his room, which
will make a much bigger difference than the surround speakers.
I mean, we're going to sit here and he's going to die on this 1 versus 2 side surround speaker pairs, and yet that room hasn't been treated yet. He intends to make all his acoustic treatments himself, probably a year or two after his theater gets finished and he starts using it. The rear right corner will be taken up almost completely with his equipment rack. The other corners will have PB3000 subwoofers in them, and his pair of Triton Towers speakers will be quite close to the walls. Overall, the room is a bit narrow, so thick panels on the side walls aren't really an option. Everything's more important than room treatments for people. Like, the thing that makes the most difference is the thing they're least willing to compromise for. Right? I'm going to put tower speakers, and I'm going to get a screen that's a little bit too big for my preferred field of view because I could just fit it in there if I make everything else sound and look worse. But God help me if I have to move an end table over 2 inches to accommodate a acoustic panel. I'm going to probably make somebody mad today. So what's our advice on how we should acoustically treat his room? I think you should move things. I think that instead of making compromises for your surrounds, for your tower speakers and for your side surrounds and doing all this extra work for them, you should be spending that energy and time trying to figure out how you can shove as much room treatment. You want a good theater, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of this, is to have a good and everything. Home I mean, he soundproofed it. He's got, in fact, I mean, he's got a theater where it's only
built in there for the back row.
6.5 feet tall. He put a riser in, and he's using double layers of drywall, which decreased the height and the width and everything else. So he was willing to go through all that. But panels on the wall? Have you lost your mind? What am I? I'm not doing that. He's fine with panels that go over the 2 windows on the right side wall. Does he need to make funny looking diffusion panels? No. Should he bother with the vertical corners if the front corner panels need to be small and the rear corners are only partially available? I don't quite understand where you're planning on putting these 2 subwoofers. First of all, because you have said that your tower speakers are going to be in the corners and the rack's going to be another corner, and you've got 2 subwoofers. Are you putting both of them in the same corner? Because that's what it sounded like you were saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the front wall one is going. Maybe it's just lying on its side and going below the screen or something like that, something close to that. But it seems as though he was envisioning that corner bass traps need to be vertical and floor to ceiling. That is not the case. It's just an efficient place. It's an efficient place to put bass traps, but it is not like necessary or the only way to do it. My first thought is, yes, one, we're going to focus on bass trapping because we want to make sure that crossover from your dual subwoofers to your speakers is as good and as linear and as smooth and as problem-free across all of your seats as possible. Now, you've already got a soffit along your left wall and along your back wall. There's not much reason you can't have a fake soffit that goes along the right wall. Yeah, I mean, you're going to be covering up those windows anyway. He says he wants to plug them anyway. So you can have a fake soffit that goes across the wall to ceiling that looks like it's just, mimicking the soffit on the other side of the room. That can all be a bass trap. When it comes to bass trapping does not have to be symmetrical.
Right.
Because bass trapping is about the entire room. And believe me, those bass waves are going to interact with every nook and cranny of this room. So it does not have to be symmetrical for bass trapping to be effective. When bass trapping panels happen to also be in locations that are like side wall reflections or back wall reflections, which they often are, then we're a little bit more worried about having some symmetry to the absorption because they're going to be bass traps and they're going to be absorbing, reflections that we use for spatial cues. But if we're talking about the wall to ceiling intersection, that isn't really a place where high frequency spatial cues are all that important. So you can put, essentially a fake soffit, even if you've got space above your screen, which I'm not sure that he will, given that it's a low ceiling already, but you could basically have a fake soffit on the 2 sides of the room that don't already have an actual soffit with something inside of it. That could be some bass trapping. You can absolutely put corner bass traps just in the upper corners of your room, so above your equipment rack, certainly above your PB3000 subwoofer in the rear left corner. You can absolutely have a vertical bass trap there. There's no reason to avoid that just because it isn't truly floor to ceiling. So I think that'll be most of the bass trapping you're worried about, maybe along the floor to wall area at the back of your room, because you're probably not using that for much of anything. And that's going to be a space that's available to just have some more bass trapping. So what I'm proposing will be asymmetrical bass trapping in this room, but that's not a problem. For bass frequencies, we just need the absorption in the room, and we need to be as thick as it can possibly be, as you can reasonably put in there. So I think that covers that. The back wall, you can definitely treat. I'm not seeing anything on your back wall that's preventing you from treating that. Now, that doesn't have to be bass traps, but it could be. You could put nice, thick pads on the back wall of your room, in between your surround back speakers. You're going to have that room there. So that's something I would definitely consider doing. Again, you can basically never go too thick. You're never going to have a panel where we go, that was too thick, you should thin it down. It's just not going to happen. You're just going to run into a practical limitation where you're like, 6 inches is as thick as I can reasonably go. Otherwise, it just looks ridiculous. We're like, yeah, that's fine. That's where you stop. So back wall, whatever corners you can, including floor to wall, including wall to ceiling corners, whatever you can there. And then It really is just your first reflection points on the side walls, which, yeah, you know what? If those need to be 2.5-inch thick panels, 2-inch panels with a 1/2-inch air gap, 3.5-inch thick panels, because you're just using standard, insulation and that has no air gap, but it's just a 3.5-inch thick panel, that's fine. That's all you're really, a couple of those panels, 2-foot by 4-foot panels at the first reflection points on your side walls. That'll do, along with your back wall treatment, most of what you need to worry about as far as specific reflections for higher frequencies goes. And I don't think you need to do a tremendous more than that. It looks like this room is prepared for carpet, so most of the overall high frequency reverberation is going to be taken care of there. You don't need diffusion panels, because diffusion panels only treat high frequencies, and you don't need to cut them down more while not cutting down the bass. So, yeah, I think that's it. I think that's your acoustic treatment plan.
Oh, I guess I'm going to... Does it really need to have a professional calibrator install the projector ceiling mount and calibrate the image? Is there maybe a handy DIY guide you could follow instead? I mean, the projector ceiling mount is just not that hard to install.
Yeah, that doesn't need to be professionally done.
So
the physical mounting.
One of the things, first of all, I don't know if you've got access to your attic, like full stuff. I don't know where this is. Looking at the windows, it looks like it's a basement. Like for me, this.
And I mean, he's got the wires hanging down already from the ceiling for where the projector is going to go. So that's the trickiest part already done.
Yeah. So you should be able to find a stud nearby, and hopefully you have enough lens shift where you can kind of sort things out that way. But let's say for those of you that have an attic, right, and or access to an attic, it is really quite easy to install a projector if you have access to your attic, a projector mount, because all you do is like most of the times we would say, you have to find studs and do all this stuff, not with projectors. because all you need to do is find that point, and like that, the point exactly where you want to install it, and then you drill a little hole, right? Like the smallest drill bit you have, just drill a little hole, and then take a
coat hanger,
like a coat hanger or a wire or something, and just shove it up there until you're pretty sure you'll be able to see it through the insulation. Then go up into your attic, find it, and then just see where you're at. Yep. Like if there's a stud nearby where you're like, okay, I just got to move over a little bit this way and I'll be able to find that stud. Sure. I'll hit the stud on that one side of my projector mount, and that's it. I'll be done. Or even easier, if you're like in the middle of a bay or not really that close, you're just like, who cares? Put just screw in the 2x4.
Yep.
Across your
two joists.
Two joists. You go straight up through. You put the pole straight up through. You mount the mount to that 2x4, and Bob's your uncle. You're done. I mean, like, this is like a no-brainer type of installation. Like this one is the easiest installation you could do. In your case, you've already got your wires hanging down. If this is a basement like I think it is, you're going to want to use a stud finder to find the stud and make sure you hit two sides, and that's it. I really don't feel like a projector mount needs to be professionally installed.
That part, no. And as far as aligning it on your screen, that is a physical trial and error process. There's no way around that. The professional
nobody's doing it any differently. Nobody's coming in there with special equipment and going, well, okay,
that's right. Now and even the professional probably isn't going to care to be as pixel perfect as I'm betting you're going to want to be. Now, the trick here when it comes to physically aligning your projector mount, because you've got three axes that you're dealing with. You got your roll, pitch, and your yaw. And in order to get it perfectly aligned where every edge is exactly square to your frame, and keeping in mind your screen might not actually be perfectly plumb and square because your front wall might not be perfectly plumb and square. But in order to get the image perfectly aligned, the trick is binoculars. Okay, I know it's not like fancy and Tom laughs at it and thinks it's ridiculous every time, but honestly, you are physically moving the projector on the mount in all three axes to get it just right. And rather than walking up to the screen so you can pixel peep it on the screen.
I'm not pixel peeping crap. I mean,
but some people
close enough.
So the trick is binoculars. That's your friend if you really want to do it that way. And then it's keeping in mind that it's like, okay, if this side is like, everything looks like it's perfectly aligned, but I've got this one little corner that's like jutting out into my black frame, and I can see that with my binoculars. That means it isn't actually perfectly aligned. You might need to rotate a little, move the roll a little, move the pitch or the yaw a little bit. That might be necessary to get it all perfectly aligned, because remember, there's a big difference in where the light is coming from versus where it ends up on the screen. There's a huge change there where a tiny little fraction of an inch movement physically of the projector results in, some trapezoidal shape of the image. So it's just trial and error. It's just tedium. When it comes to actually calibrating the image, though, once I would say the physical part you can do yourself. If you're handy enough to build your own DIY acoustic panels, you're handy enough to physically mount your projector. But as far as calibrating it, like I certainly cannot point you to a handy-dandy DIY guide for calibrating your projector, because you have to measure. Like, if you're talking about actual color calibration. Actual calibration. If we're just talking about basic setup, I mean, you could use a Spears and Munsell disc and just go through the setup and get your basic contrast and black level and all that set that way. That would be fine. But if we're talking about a full color calibration, it has to be measured. So that means, are you purchasing a meter and CalMan software and learning how to do that yourself? Or are you paying actually a bit less than that all costs to bring in a calibrator to do it for you? And that's really where the value lies for a professional calibrator, because they'll be able to get you spot on, and they'll bring in their way more expensive light meters than the ones you're going to buy, and paying them to do it actually costs less than you getting the good meter and the software to do it yourself. So there's the value there.
You can just not do that at all, and instead set it to the recommended.
If it's an Epson, you set it to natural. If it's a JVC, you set it to cinema, and
and you just go on with your life and realize that it's like 90% of the way there, if not more.
So remarkably, we're like not going to get through all these questions at this pace, so I think we're good to go on.
Mike returns to us with the eternal question: maximum image quality or sheer screen size? Image quality. Thank you. We're done. Next question. Oh my God, look at all the words. He wrote to us previously and said that he could fit sit either 11 feet from a 120-inch projection screen or 9 feet from a flat panel. We said that if he could simply use a TV stand or an extending wall mount, he could achieve the same field of view with an 83-inch OLED, so we figured that was the best solution. But when he mentioned the two different seating distances, that was already accounting for putting the flat panel on a stand instead of mounted on the wall. The seats are staying in the same place no matter what, so he's figuring on it being possible to have a flat panel right at the front of the TV stand to make the viewing distance 9 feet instead of 11-foot distance to the front wall. Trying to bring an additional foot closer isn't going to happen. Now for some further context. Back in 2014, he had a Samsung Plasma. He kept that until about a year ago when he took advantage of Hisense's 100-day in-home trial to try their L9G ultra short throw projector and the 120-inch ambient light projecting screen. In several ways, he thought the overall picture quality of the Hisense ultra short throw setup was better than the Samsung Plasma. Even with a small amount of ambient light, it looked brighter and the colors looked better, and you could do 4K and HDR, which of course his Plasma couldn't accept at all. But black levels were definitely more of a dark gray. And that was very noticeable for anything that had black bars, even when he had his room completely pitch black, or maybe even especially when he had his room completely pitch black. The black levels and contrast were never as high as his Plasma. That said, there are better ultra-short throw projectors than the Hisense L9G, so while he wound up returning the Hisense, it was with the idea in mind that he could get a better UST projector instead. But now the comparison is with OLED, not his old Plasma, so he's back to being unsure what he should get. Can we talk this through and hopefully help him make a decision? Have the newest triple laser. I don't understand why people think that a different light source will make the black bars better, but a triple laser UST projector or ultra short throw projectors close the gap enough that the much bigger screen size and field of view can overcome the compromises to black level and contrast. It makes no sense that the light source would somehow make the black levels better. They don't project black.
They do not.
You are never going to, if you are trying to recreate the black levels and the contrast that you got from Plasma,
or from OLED, which is even better than Plasma,
you have no recourse but to go OLED.
It's a losing battle.
There is no, like, people have come to us many times and said, "Oh, I'm going to get this projector, blah 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 blah," and we're like, "Yeah, that's which projector has the best black levels?" We tell them, they buy it. They're like, "Well, the blacks aren't black." I'm like, "You didn't say which projector had blacks, you said which one had the best
the answer
black
is
levels?
none of them. There's
Yes.
none of them. The JVCs get as good as it gets, and
it's
they
still
are
not
not
black.
pure black. You can still make out the black bars. You have to kind of squint to see it most of the time, as long as there's something lighting up in the actual image part of the image. The black bars on the JVCs in a pitch black room, mind you, even with an ambient light rejecting screen, in a pitch black room, the JVCs get as close as you can, but they're still there. You can still see the black bars that you cannot see whatsoever on an OLED. So, I mean, that anytime you go projector, you just have to put it out of your mind that you're going to have actual OLED black. That is just completely never going to happen. But he's aware of that. He was impressed by what that Hisense laser TV, ultra short throw projector with its included ambient light rejecting screen. He was impressed with how it looked, but he's like, well, I did want better. He wants that size, but he wants even better. And it's like, I mentioned this, I think, on the Thanksgiving podcast. Like, as much as I'm kind of thankful that these ultra short throw projectors are around, like, I would never be able to tolerate one. I would never be able, as much as I love the idea of this huge screen size and the convenience of being able to set it up like that, none of them, doesn't matter how expensive you get, none of them are able to make the black bars look black. They will always look gray with any ultra short throw projector that's available today. Put a little bit of ambient light in there, even with an ambient light rejecting screen, it's just those black bars turn a little bit gray. So it really is just that question. Is that the part of image that you're willing to sacrifice to get the much larger size? There's no question you are not going to go out there and for between $5,000 and $10,000 get a 120-inch flat panel. That is just not going to happen.
Yeah.
The new micro LED modular displays can get to that kind of size, but not at that type of price range. There's six figures and up. So that I don't know any other way to just put it more plainly and say that's the compromise you have to choose. Right now, we mentioned
it's like people are like, I would like to get a sports car for, I would like to go buy a sports car. I would like it to be able to go, 150 miles per hour, and I would like to spend less than $10,000 on it. You're like, sure, yeah. I mean, no, it doesn't exist.
That's a great idea.
It seems. I bet you're not the only person who wants that. I think we all want that if that's possible, but it doesn't exist. Yeah. Especially not brand new, which is exactly what you're asking for here. So it's not. This is not something that exists.
So many people are mentioning that projector screen, ultra short throw projector shootout, where the $3,000 4-movie projector, shocked them all and got the highest scores. And people keep looking at the 10 in the black level thing. And it's like, no, that was all adjusted. That was all adjusted to say, out of this was the best one. We gave it a 10. If we had compared it to a JVC, it would have scored a 6. And if we had compared it to an OLED, it would have scored like a 3. But it got a 10 because out of this group, it was the best. Yeah. Right? Like, that's the part that a lot of people aren't comprehending in their mind. It's not that the 4-movie $3,000 ultra short throw projector suddenly creates black bars that look like a 10. That's not what's going on. So I've mentioned, personally, I think if I was going to go for an ultra short throw, I'd be getting LG's. LG's are like $7,000 one, mainly because it handles HDR the best. That's the only one that has dynamic tone mapping, which I really, really, really want, especially for a projector. If I'm going to try and do HDR on a projector, I really want a frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping, and LG is like the only game in town. And it's a really good ultra short throw projector, but like I said, it's around the $6,500, $7,000 mark, and then you're adding a $1,500 to $2,000 ambient light rejecting screen to that to get the best performance. So that means I would have loved to, during the Cyber Monday sale, say, you know what you should do? Go get that 98-inch TCL R7 series that was down to $5,000 on Cyber Monday because, look, that's also not an OLED, but it's mini LED, full array local dimming backlighting. Will there be the occasional little bit of blooming on the TCL 98-inch R7 series TV? Yes. Every so often, you put some subtitles up there that are in the black bars, and there will be a little bit of a halo around that because the local dimming is not pixel for pixel like it is on OLED. But that would have been the solution. But even at $8,500, which is what it's going for right now, its regular price, it's not a terrible deal. Like if you were going for the projector, the ultra short throw projector that visibly looks better than the Hisense you already considered, and that was like a $5,000 package, you're getting to the $6,500, $7,000 ultra short throw projector like the LG. So you're getting into this price range once you put that projector together with its ambient light rejecting screen. And this TV you could put on the TV stand 2 feet closer to you, and at 98 inches, you're getting the same field of view as 120-inch screen from 11 feet away. You've actually done it. So in a way, I'm still saying flat panel. I'm like, as crazy as it sounds, 98-inch LCD mini LED full array local dimming flat panel is not out of the question. Yeah. And I think I would still get that.
You're still going to find a little bit of blooming and like.
Oh, he's still not going to be happy.
Yeah, this is the thing. And no matter what you say,
there is a 97-inch OLED for $25,000.
There you go. Get that.
Yeah.
Or just wait. I don't know what else to say. It's
my simple answer to
your requirements for what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Something has to change when those. Either you have to sit closer. Yep. Or you have to spend an exponentially higher amount of money to get what you want.
My simple answer is, have the UST projectors close the gap? No, they haven't. The black bars are still gray.
Yeah, and they will continue to be gray. I just don't see any projector ever. Like, I just don't see how they're ever going to be able to project black. Like, I don't understand. Like, there has to be a significantly newer technology than what exists out there right now. I just don't see it happening. Billy. In Billy's small, completely blacked out, dedicated home theater, he's been using an all-clip speaker setup 7.2.4 configuration with a pair of SVS PB2000 subs in diagonally opposite corners. His acoustically transparent CinemaScope screen goes wall-to-wall, and he has acoustically transparent masking panels for the front left and right sides of the screens for 16:9 content. He installed in-wall front left, center, right speakers and surround back speakers, but due to the obstructions in his sidewalls, he went with angled on-wall surrounds. He also has 4 in-ceiling clip speakers for the overheads. What ifs? Oh, I see. They're like the
wedge-shaped speakers. The surrounds are the wedge-shaped. They're just mounted up high, and the angle's being used to angle them down. And they're on-wall, while all his other speakers are in-wall.
Too close to the Atmos speakers, but whatevs. He's powering his 11 speakers with the 9 amplifiers built in his Denon X3700H, plus a 2-channel Emotiva amp. Obviously, that's been sufficient with his clip speakers in the small room, and he's honestly been happy with the sound. You think? I think this is the most.
If that doesn't get loud enough, something's gone horribly wrong.
But he just has the itch. He can't help but wonder what a change of speakers might be able to offer, but he has several restrictions. He needs to keep the same overall configuration with in-wall front left, center, right, and surround backs with on-wall surrounds, preferably angled, since they have to be mounted a bit high to clear the hidden window. He'd like to keep the budget for the 7 ear-level speakers to around $5,000 or less. He wouldn't honestly need to replace his in-ceiling clip speakers, would he? He'd like to continue powering the setup with his Denon X3700H. So do we have any recommendations that we think would be a noticeable upgrade?
So yeah, right away I'll say you're perfectly fine keeping your in-ceiling speakers for Atmos. So I'm not worried about that at all. You can put just about anything half decent up there.
I want you to put more room treatments in here before you do any of this, though. You've got whole walls. Like, I'm looking at the it looks like the right wall by where, next to that door. Is that? Oh no, the left wall, right next to the seat, right there. Ain't nothing there. It's just a big blank wall
that's
for
a window.
No reason.
Right, on the right side wall, right next to the seat, that's the window that's covered over. It's all painted the same color, but you can sort of see the seams of the little archway that forms the window there. So that's why nothing's mounted there, including the speaker.
Oh, hang it from the ceiling. I mean, just
or stand it up.
Just stand it up. Yeah, and the other side too. There's a panel there. It looks like it's in some sort of opening. Maybe it looks like there's a
could be. I'm not sure.
But there's space there's lots of places for more room treatments. You've got like sort of corner traps in your top corners, which I like.
Yep, like that. They're nice and big and chunky.
They are, but I see a lot of room for more acoustic treatments before you start. You got an itch? That's the way to scratch it. Scratch that itch by putting more panels in here because you've got plenty of space. And I would I mean, I would venture to say that you're going to end up with a more even response than you have right now, and it would probably be a more noticeable upgrade than what you're planning on doing with your speakers, what you're thinking of doing.
It's really tricky because getting an audible difference from Klipsch speakers is definitely possible.
Yes.
You know, and like even so, I mean, one of my thoughts was, oh, you want the best in-wall speakers and wedge-shaped options for the side surrounds. I'm like, oh, per listen, you know, but that's not going to fit $5,000 for 7 of those. Not even close. But you know, it's like, can you get an upgrade? Well, that's going to be debatable. That's a bit subjective, to be perfectly honest. Can you get a different sound? Absolutely. I can 100% suggest, I've got 3 suggestions for you that are speakers that either I know sound really, really good, in the case of 2 of them, or new ones that I haven't heard yet that I just think are intriguing. And if you want to try them and report back, I'd be happy to take your opinion on them. But, you know, all of these will fit within the budget that you've specified, but would I say they're like just an out-and-out upgrade over your Klipsch speakers? Not necessarily. I will definitely say I would expect you to be able to detect a difference. So I'll just start in first with the ones that I just think are very intriguing, and that is Aperion's brand new Theatris installation speaker series. They have a bunch of them that are on-wall designs, and they have in-wall designs, and what I very much like about their in-wall designs is they are fully sealed enclosures. They are not separate backer boxes or anything like that. They just come as fully sealed speakers that fit into your walls. Now, for the room size that you have, you don't need the big ones, all right? If you want to go overkill, you could get the 8-inch models that have the ribbon tweeter. It's a folded ribbon tweeter with a dedicated mid-range driver right above it, and then an 8-inch woofer. Those go for $800 each. That's the price that's going for those, is $800 each. You could put those as your front, left, center, and right, and then you could get the same design but with the 6.5-inch woofer that go for $700 each. Those could be your surround backs, no problem there. And then they have the wedge-shaped design, which doesn't have the dedicated mid-range driver, but they have the wedge-shaped design that has the folded ribbon tweeter, the 6.5-inch woofer in the wedge-shaped cabinet, and those go for $850 for a pair. So you can definitely fit within the budget that you've got. I would absolutely expect there to be an audible difference in the sound from these folded ribbon tweeter designs versus the Klipsch speakers that you have. Are they an upgrade? I don't know. I haven't heard these yet. I haven't seen measurements on these yet. I don't know. I just think they're intriguing, and it's Aperion, so returning them is easy, although they don't have the same completely free 2-way shipping that they used to, but they still have excellent customer service and options there. Tom must have thoughts, though.
Yeah, my thought, I mean, I agree. These do look intriguing, and Aperion, generally speaking, makes speakers that I have found to be
pretty
pleasant.
Tell it like it is. Yeah.
I'm so if historically that they follow their history and how they've traditionally made speakers, I would expect these to be good. I would expect them to be good.
Exactly.
I would also expect, and I got to be honest with you, you're going to spend a lot of time upgrading these speakers because, I mean, when we talk that law of diminishing returns we talk about all the time, it's very hard to get a massive upgrade in speakers without either going from really bad to just like anything or going from a speaker that has a sound like Klipsch just do to something that doesn't, but is also like way better. And that's not exactly what you don't have the price delta here in order to make that happen. So I expect that you're going to go, these are definitely better. I think they're great. And then everyone else that you know and love is going to sit in your home theater and go, sounds the same. And they're never going to notice the difference. It's going to drive you absolutely bonkers. And then you're going to start questioning yourself and you're like, I don't really know. But you're not going to be able to swap the speakers in and out to test.
Certainly not easily. No.
And that's what the real thing is. So I would order the front, left, and right speakers that you plan on getting. I would put them on some sort of stand and I would try to A/B them. In some
and given
way.
that they do come fully sealed already, they are a bit easier to audition than a lot of in-wall speakers, because there will be some difference to the sound once you have them fully installed on the wall, but not nearly as much as speakers that just are open on the back,
right?
Which you can't really audition in room whatsoever.
It would give you more of a sense, and it would be helpful if you did that with not just yourself in the room. If there's other people in your house, I would include them as much as you can. So when I did this with my wife, I would sit down and I would wait until like a Friday night or Saturday night, and the kids are sort of in bed, and dinner's over, and the dishes are done, and she's got a glass of wine, and I had a beer. I'm like, I want to just compare these two speakers, and I want to get your input on it.
Yeah.
And that way you could kind of incorporate their feedback, and you could both have some buy-in on it.
Yeah.
I do like this option because it does allow you to A/B these speakers quite a bit. But if you do the full, like I said, this $5,000 is a lot of money.
You could even just get the pair that's $850 for the angled ones, just to see if you hear any difference at all.
Right.
Like that would be a pretty easy one to audition and then return. So
yeah,
and it's not crazy expensive to just keep that on your credit card for however long.
$5,000 is still a lot of money to spend on a speaker upgrade that you might be very excited about, or you might at the end of it go, I mean, it's better. So, I would definitely spend a little bit of that money on some more room treatments and do that first. But that's
that in mind, the in-wall speakers and on-wall speakers that I would point to, that I would go, for me, I feel pretty comfortable saying this is probably an upgrade, almost certainly an upgrade over what you have now. That would be Focal's 300 series. Now, normally, I don't think they'd be in your price range. This is relying on getting them from Accessories for Less at a pretty healthy discount, like Accessories for Less often does. Like when I looked at them today, it all says almost sold out. I don't know what that means. I don't know if they have 3 of them, if they only have 1 of them. I don't know what that means as far as the in-wall. But the 300 series in-walls, those do not come with a backer box. Now, you already have the in-wall clip speakers. Those don't have a backer box built onto them. I don't know if you already have backer boxes that you've built yourself, which would work just fine with these 300 series Focals, or if you would have to add that or whatever's going on. But that is an option that, from Accessories for Less, puts it within your price range. And then for the on-wall option, the 300 series on-walls, they don't have an angle built into them, but it wouldn't be that difficult to, rig up something that would give them an angle if you really want to. These you could mount horizontally and then angle them if vertically isn't going to work, because they're fairly tall for the 300 series on-walls. Those are a speaker with sound quality that's enough of a difference. I would expect them to be considered an upgrade. The other option that I'm just going to mention, because I trust them and the in-walls always sound good, is Kef. For your price range, you'd be looking at the Q series. So they've got a THX certified model within the Q series that you might want to put up front. You could use a smaller option for your surround backs. And then for the on-walls, there's the Q series wedge-shaped speakers, the Q50A. Those are wall mountable. You could mount them exactly like you have. So those would fit in the price range too.
Right. Monoprice has those THX ones now too,
yep,
right?
They got the in-walls, but they don't have really any on-wall model to go along with it. They have their on-wall ones, but they're significantly lower output, which wouldn't be a problem in your case, but they're not really part of the same series.
I just get like the Prime Elevation speakers, or one of these other ones that we're talking about would probably be fine.
You could
too. Yeah. You could do that as well as a cheaper option. But again, I think that we're talking about upgrades that are noticeable if you do an A/B comparison, but maybe not like if you put a week difference from the time that you listen to one to the other.
Yeah. So, summary: I would trust myself that the Focal 300 series would be the biggest upgrade. They're exceedingly neutral, and I like those speakers very, very much. But they're the most expensive, and you would need to have a backer box solution. I'm most intrigued by the Aperion Theatris series. I would enjoy getting your feedback on if you gave those a try. Steve
says that thanks to us, his living room home theater setup turned out pretty darn nice. He's got another setup on the back patio. There's a 70-inch Vizio TV along with a Vizio M512A H6 soundbar that Rob said is the only soundbar he doesn't mind recommending, and an NVIDIA Shield that serves as the only source, and it's a nice, simple setup that his wife and friends enjoy using. He didn't want to mess around with HDMI ARC or ARC, audio return channel, and since they only ever used the NVIDIA Shield, he plugged that into the soundbar's HDMI input and then plugged the soundbar's HDMI output into the regular port of the TV, not the ARC port. That all seems to work perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So, is there anything he needs to worry about as far as the Vizio soundbar being able to pass through the best possible video signal from the Shield to the TV? I mean, I can't imagine that it's going to cut anything. So
no, in your case, you're absolutely fine. The thing it will not pass is 4K at 120 hertz, right? It's not HDMI 2.1. So if this were a gaming setup with an Xbox Series X or a PlayStation 5 or a high-end graphics card from a PC, that would be the thing that wouldn't pass through. But in your case, you're never going beyond 4K 60 with HDR, Dolby Vision, all those things pass through that particular Vizio soundbar just fine. So there's nothing to worry about on the video side of things in this case.
So what would be the best audio and video settings for the Shield?
Yeah, so audio-wise, pretty simple. That can be left in auto because that Vizio soundbar is able to decode all the audio things. You can set it full lossless Dolby Atmos. You can set it the Dolby Digital Plus version of Atmos that's coming from all the streaming services. You can send it any sort of DTS signal. It'll work with all of those. DTS-X, that soundbar supports it all. So the audio setting is very simple. You can leave that at automatic and there's not going to be any issues there. On the video side of things, I find the Shield a little bit finicky, and particularly with Dolby Vision. Dolby Vision seems to only come out of the Shield at 12 bits, and that does seem to be an issue sometimes. My honest recommendation for the NVIDIA Shield is to set it to ultra high definition, so 3840 by 2160 at the 59.94 hertz, because they give you that option. So you do it at the 59.94 hertz, and we're going to be fine with leaving it there. And then I would set it to the HDR10 available at 10 bits, because that works. All right. And I've never had any issue on any 4K HDR capable television leaving it at the 10-bit HDR10 available. When I try to put it into Dolby Vision, some displays and some AV receivers and some sound bars wig out with the Dolby Vision part of it because, like I say, it seems to force 12-bit. If I try to use 12-bit for the HDR10 side of things, like that just seems to be an issue. I'm not worried about Dolby Vision in this setup. It's just not a big concern to me. The way that things are handled in HDR10 is utterly fine, in my opinion. So that's my recommendation. If you just put it on Dolby Vision, it's kind of going to automatically set it, and you're not going to have much say in it anyway. But if you're getting any sort of glitches with Dolby Vision, then I recommend the ultra high definition resolution at 59.94 hertz at 10-bit HDR10 available. Yeah.
Lastly, he asks, what's the best way to get soundbars audio dialed in and optimized? The back patio is covered but not enclosed, so obviously the little wireless sub isn't going to be pressurizing anything. They mostly use the setup for watching football with the
whole world.
Yeah, with the occasional movie or TV show. Is there a calibration process for the soundbar that he should follow? I mean, I would just set it to stereo or whatever. Just have an output stereo and just leave it at that.
But it can do 5.1.2 Atmos.
Oh, sure it can.
Yes.
I have an article for that. Hold on.
The main thing, the absolute main thing, because there aren't a ton of adjustments to even do in that Vizio soundbar, but the main thing is the channel balance, the channel levels. And there isn't like a built-in test tone to help you do that. So what you can do, since you're using an NVIDIA Shield, you'll be able to do this quite easily. I've got a link that goes back to the old Dolby Atmos test tones that used to be readily available on Dolby's website, and for some reason they've removed them and can't find them there anymore, but other places have them available, so I'll have a link for where you can get it. You can just use the 5.1.2 test tones, because that's exactly what that soundbar can handle, and that allows you to just play pink noise out of each channel individually and use an SPL meter. In this case, absolutely feel free to use an SPL meter app on your phone that you get for free. All we're looking for is equal SPL readings from each of the channels. It doesn't really matter if it's actually reference volume or anything like that. I'm not worried about that. You do want to turn the soundbar up nice and loud when you're playing this so that you can read 75 dB on your SPL meter, but it just getting that equal, that's all that matters. So an SPL meter app, even if it isn't absolute accuracy, totally fine. We're just looking for equal readings from all 7 of the speaker channels. So that you can totally do with those 5.1.2 test tones. I'll have the link for those that came from Dolby. You can play those back on your NVIDIA Shield in VLC or in Plex or Ambi or Kodi or any number of things that can play an MKV file. As long as you got a piece of software on the Shield that can play an MKV file, you can go ahead and do that. The only other things to adjust, there's bass level and treble level, right? So your old tone controls are there. And then there are 4 EQ presets. So for that, it's as simple to me as playing a sweep, a full frequency sweep, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. You can just play that off of YouTube. There's a 30-second one on YouTube that I come across all the time that just plays the sweep. Just have that playing on repeat and just try it, right? Just try it out. It's as simple as trial and error, and go ahead and trust your ears on that. Because if you're listening to it and you go, oh, one of these EQs, because there's only 4 presets and there's no manual EQ setting to adjust. There's just the 4 presets. If you're like, well, one of these clearly, you know, the volume is just up and down like a roller coaster, and one of these, it sounds reasonably even throughout that entire sweep, then that's the one you go with, as if accuracy is what you want. And then there's a dialogue boost if you want to boost the dialogue, and it does what it says on the tin. So that's about all you need to adjust. You're going to play a sweep and adjust the EQ with that, and the main thing is the channel levels.
There you go. I was super helpful on that question. Ilango. Ilango convinced his mother-in-law to get a LG C2 OLED. She hates its built-in interface, so she wants to stick to using the Apple TV 4K that she's used to. She also has a Blu-ray player and a cable box from Rogers. Yes, she's in Canada. Yeah. For audio, she's got a Sonos ARC soundbar, and both the C2 OLED and the Sonos ARC say they support HDMI eARC.
That's right.
Ilango was going to go over to her place for the holidays, and he said he would help set it all up for her. So now he's coming to us beforehand to make sure he gets it right. Does he need to connect the OLED?
Don't let me look like a fool.
Yeah, don't worry. You'll be fine. Does he need to connect the OLED to the Sonos ARC with the ultra-high-speed HDMI cable that specifically says it supports eARC?
No. No, it doesn't have to be ultra high speed. You don't have anything that's doing 4K 120 or variable refresh rate in this setup. You could go, honestly, with just about any HDMI cable, but if you get a premium certified high speed, that'll certainly support eARC as well. eARC isn't like, I know it's within the HDMI 2.1 specification, but that's not a bandwidth thing. As long as it has the physical connections, it'll be just fine. So you don't need to go and get a special ultra high speed HDMI cable. If you've got high speed HDMI cables, those will be just fine for what you need to do here as far as eARC, the enhanced audio return channel, goes.
So Mother Price Slim 8K HDMI cables will be fine for her 3 sources, right? Yeah, be more than fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The 4K 60 at the most from the Apple TV 4K. The Blu-ray player, because it just said Blu-ray player, it didn't say ultra high definition Blu-ray player. That's not even going to be 4K, and neither will a cable box from Rogers. Maybe it'll be 4K. I don't know. Some of our Canadian services have some 4K, but it's not going to be 4K 120. That's for sure. So those will be just fine.
So does it make sense to plug the 3 sources into the 3 HDMI ports of the OLED that are not marked as the eARC port, and then use a single eARC port to connect the OLED to the Sonos soundbar? Oh, bottom hurts. Does it matter that the other 3 HDMI inputs on the OLED are not marked as eARC? And the answer to that question is no. Any audio that's going in there can be sent back by eARC. But how many inputs does the Sonos ARC have, I guess is my question.
It has 1 HDMI port, which is the eARC port. It is not set up to be a pass-through device. You cannot plug an HDMI source into the Sonos ARC.
It's so convenient. That's what Sonos
I know.
is so good. Sonos is the best because it
steals one of your HDMI ports and doesn't give you any way to send the video through it. It has 1 HDMI port on the Sonos ARC, and it is the eARC port. So this is really your only option. In order to let the Sonos ARC soundbar do what it can do, which is the Sonos ARC soundbar can decode Atmos. Yeah. it'll do that. So you've got an Apple TV 4K. There's going to be some sources that are sending Atmos back to it. So what you've described is the only way, the only reasonable way in this scenario to connect things. The 3 sources are going to go into the 3 HDMI ports. It'll be ports 1, 2, and 4, I believe, because I'm pretty sure that port 3 is the one on the LG OLED that is marked for eARC. Now, there is only 1 eARC port on any TV. So it's not as though all the ports have to be marked eARC input or something like that. No. Right. What's happening is all of the video and audio from your 3 sources is going into the television. The television is obviously showing you the video portion of that directly itself. The audio portion gets routed out of its single eARC port and sent to the Sonos soundbar. So that's the connection path of how the signals are going. Your TV has become your HDMI switch, right? There's no AV receiver in this scenario. So your TV has become the HDMI switch, switching between your three sources. And that HDMI 3 eARC port is now, it's almost like an optical audio connection, except it can do more than an optical audio connection ever could. It can send full bandwidth, lossless Dolby Atmos out of that thing. And that's what you're doing it for.
So is she going to be able to get Atmos from her Apple TV 4K and Blu-ray player this way? The answer is yes. But will she be able to hear it? I mean, it's no. it's a
but as far
soundbar.
as, the little indicator light lighting up and saying you're getting an Atmos signal, yes, that can absolutely happen.
So any concerns about which audio formats will work for from her Blu-ray player or Rogers cable box? Unless it should just be passed through anyways, right? So it should work just
there
fine.
is a concern from the
DTS
Rogers cable
thing?
DTS. Yeah, from the Rogers cable box, no concerns. That's going to be Dolby Digital, Dolby Digital Plus at the most, and very often stereo still for a lot of things. No problem from the Rogers cable box. But from the Blu-ray player, there are definitely, especially it's a Blu-ray player again, a lot of Blu-rays are DTS HD master audio. And the LG TV, in this case, is the bottleneck. LG TVs do not handle any DTS audio at all, from the C10 onward, so the C2 that she's got, does not handle DTS audio whatsoever. So basically, for discs that have DTS HD master audio as the primary soundtrack, it is smart enough that it's going to detect that there's no DTS decoder going on here. It'll just default back to the Dolby Digital 5.1 soundtrack for most Blu-ray discs. That's what you're going to get. For the handful of Blu-rays that have Dolby True HD on them instead of DTS HD Master Audio, that'll go through just fine. Dolby signals go through just fine, including Dolby Atmos. But DTS HD Master Audio, DTS X, you won't get those from the Blu-ray player. It'll bump back down to the vanilla Dolby Digital 5.1 soundtrack.
Unlikely to sound any different on a soundbar.
On a Sonos Arc soundbar, I'm really not worried, but for your own edification and knowing what's going on, if you're like, how come I can't get this DTS soundtrack to play? That is the reason why.
He asks, is there maybe a completely different way he should go about setting all this up? Yeah, get a receiver.
I mean, from what the scenario described, no. This is the only connection path that makes sense.
Yeah, this is it.
The thing to be aware of, though, HDMI CEC has to be on. You cannot turn HDMI CEC off and still use HDMI ARC or HDMI eARC. You have to have HDMI CEC on.
Get ready for some phone calls.
Yeah, because she's got three sources. I don't know what the remote control situation is, right? If she picks up the Apple TV 4K remote, you need to do a little setup there so that its volume buttons control the Sonos, and when you power on the Apple TV 4K with the Apple TV 4K remote, it will automatically turn on the TV and go to the correct input. And same thing for the Blu-ray player remote, and same thing for the Rogers cable remote. Now, you're not doing anything that CEC wasn't designed to do, and all of those remotes are capable of doing this. All they need to be able to do is turn the TV on and set it to the correct input and control the volume on the Sonos Arc soundbar. They are all capable of doing that, but we know from experience with HDMI CEC, is there a possibility that something gets screwed up in all of this? I mean, it will. It's not a matter of if, it's when. It's like, it's going to happen. And if she doesn't like using the LG Magic Wand remote and its interface, because that's the other option, right? You have the one remote, which is LG's Magic Wand remote, and you use that to control all of the source devices, but she doesn't like that interface, well, then you're back to using each individual remote for its thing. So that is something you're just going to have to painstakingly go through, of being like, okay, I pick up this remote, I press the power button, does the TV turn on and go to the correct input, and am I able to control the volume? All of that, like I say, is stuff that absolutely should be capable of doing, but you're just going to have to go through the setup of each of the three sources to make sure it actually works.
Dazz, Going back to Michael's question from last week regarding having moved a seat 1 foot forward, apparently Michael is a very popular man. And now his Audyssey subwoofer trim level is being set to -12. Assuming it's not just the Audyssey editor app bug that Martin informed us about in the comments, is there a simple electronic solution that could be applied? For example, could it be as simple as manually adjusting the distance setting in the subwoofer in the AV receiver? Would adding or subtracting just 1 foot from the automatically detected distance setting compensate for having physically moved the microphone by a foot? I mean, that's the same as adjusting the phase. I mean, it's just, you could try, but I don't think it's really going to make that much difference.
Yeah, the key here is that Michael was using a single subwoofer.
Yeah.
Right. So if we imagine that all that distance setting is doing with a single subwoofer is changing the time when the sound leaves the subwoofer.
Yeah.
So that's like, well, whether I'm playing a movie now or 10 minutes from now, it's not going to change the wave pattern in my room. Once the sound leaves the sub, the same thing happens in the room. The same standing wave forms in the same place. By altering an electronic delay of when the sound begins, it doesn't change anything to do with the wave pattern in the room. Where I think Dazz was thinking was, well, if we get into multiple subwoofers,
yes,
that's where changing the phase or the distance setting of one subwoofer and not the other can have an impact on the wave pattern that forms within the room. Because now you have two bass-producing things in the room, and we're altering the timing between the two of them. So now we could have a scenario where the same standing waves are still forming. It's just that we've got the standing wave of the first bass producing thing happening at this moment, and then the same standing wave comes but at a different time, and those two things interact and form an all new wave pattern. So that's really the reason why, if you get into a scenario like what Michael had, and if it turns out it isn't just the Audyssey editor app bug that was causing all of this, that it really was a standing wave issue, that if you are unable to physically move anything in this setup, if you really can't move, like we were talking about, maybe you can move the sub 6 inches and you can move the seat or just the microphone 6 inches, and maybe we can get around this so that at least the equalization isn't all thrown out of whack. But if you truly cannot move anything, then there isn't much you can do besides introducing another bass-producing thing.
Mm-hmm.
So where Dazz is thinking is still completely valid is, well, it is a crossover between the speakers and the subwoofer.
Right.
That means you do have more than one bass-producing thing in the crossover region. So could changing the relative delays of the subwoofer versus the speakers have an impact in the crossover region? And it could. The problem, though, is that your opportunity in Audyssey to change the trim levels or the distance settings or anything like that, that takes place after it already did the measurements, right? Like, it runs its set of measurements. It sets the trim levels and the distances that it thinks are correct. You can absolutely go and change those after, but the equalization has already been done with those trim level and distance settings having been set. And when you manually change it after the fact, you can't now keep it where you set it manually and go back and redo just the EQ unless you get the Multi-EQ X software for $200 and do it that way. That's one of the things some people really love about it, is that now you can do that sort of thing. You can manually change trim levels and delays and then just redo the EQ without it automatically resetting the distances and trim levels. So yeah, Dazz is not, you're not out to lunch by any means on your thinking, but it isn't as simple in Michael's setup with the single subwoofer, because what we were worried about is that since you're getting this really weird trim level being set, that is impacting the equalization. And unfortunately, there's no easy way to get around that. I guess paying $200 for Multi-EQ X is one solution that Michael could entertain. And then there would be sort of an electronic solution, like you've talked about.
That may or may not really make any
yeah, because if
difference.
The standing wave is well below the crossover frequency, then it still doesn't work unless
That's
you add
right.
a second sub. Yeah.
So it really feels like just moving that seat a little bit more will make more
6 inches, man.
for
6
free.
Inches.
Yeah. All right, well, that's the end of that. Another podcast
sure
in the books. So let's remind people that this is the podcast that answers your questions, your AV and home theater questions. To get your questions answered, just ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. I'm going to thank our listeners of the week. I'm going to thank Raf and whoever Media Verge is for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and sending us a PayPal donation, as well as 133 patrons over at patreon.com, including Steve.
That is all correct. Yeah, Raf and Media Verge, whoever that might be, thank you very much for the PayPal donations. And patreon.com/AVRant podcast is the place to go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation, or to re-sign up to make your automatic monthly donation.
Check your credit cards, people.
Oh, yeah, my credit card. So 133 patrons as we're recording this right now. Steve, thank you for being one of them.
So thank Jay for sending me photos to use on avgadgets.com, where I'm the editor-in-chief.
Yeah, thank you, Jay.
And also thank those who sent us notes of gratitude from Jay, Eric, Mike, Billy, Daniel, Aras, and Steve.
I'll say the names one more time. Jay, Eric, Mike, Billy, Daniel, Aras, and Steve. Thank you all very much for sending us the notes of gratitude, the notes of encouragement that we definitely appreciate. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.